Hello, everyone. Appreciate your patience. Sorry, there was a little bit of technical difficulties on our end, but it's great to see everybody in the chat, recognize some names and faces. So that's always a nice feeling. So I'm Caroline. I'm the program manager for Techstars Austin. Just a brief overview of Crowdcast and this event. Use the chat to introduce yourself, make any comments, any thoughts, leave any of that there. And then you should see an ask a question feature on the bottom panel. That's where you can input any questions that you want us to answer. So feel free to start lining any of those up. We'll obviously open things up for questions, but that's kind of where you'll want to leave them and have the chat more as comments and introductions. We also have some top questions prepared that we get during initial founder meetings and our office hours. So we'll be able to kind of highlight those as well if they don't come from you all. But yeah, excited to be here. And just to kick off, I will start, the introductions, and then Amos, our managing director, will do a brief overview of the Techstars Austin program, our investment thesis, what we look for in founders, and we'll turn it over to you. So as I mentioned before, I'm Caroline. I am the program manager for Techstars Austin, started back in December. Loving it so far. And previous to that, I was managing the mentor program at Capital Factory, which you Austin folks will likely be familiar.
Hey everybody! Thank you all for joining us today. We're really excited, as we sort of get closer and closer to the time when we get to figure out who we're going to get to work with in January of 2022. So I'm Amos. I'm the managing director of Techstars here in Austin, and have been for the last 6 years. So about to run my 7th program, I think, here in Austin. And as some of you probably know, before that, I spent the better part of 20 years doing what you all do, which is founding and building early stage companies. And so, this is truly a thrill to get to, to be here and get to work with, with all of you. And then I think Griffin is going to introduce himself as well. And then I'll tell you a little bit about sort of the program and how we think about the companies that we get to work with every year. Can't hear you, Griff. You're on mute.
Maybe Griff might be having some technical difficulties, so we'll introduce Griffin. So Griffin started as our operations associate for the most recent program that ran in January, and he has been leading the sourcing and recruiting for this upcoming class. So a lot of those in the chat, I got an intro from Griffin to meet with, so most of you have probably chatted with him or will if you are interested in applying. So he's here and available for any upcoming meetings.
And we'll drop his email in the chat towards the end so that y'all can reach out to him, and hopefully he'll work out the technical issues. But he's awesome. Cool. So what I'll do now is I'll tell you a little bit about sort of how we think about the selection process every year, and then a little bit about the program for those of you who don't. So I'll touch on the overview of the program, and then if people have questions, this is an Ask Me Anything, so ask us anything you want. We'll be as thorough as we possibly can. So just to start with, the way that we think about the companies that we get to work with, the first thing I'll start with, it's a common question is, are there sectors or industries that you're specifically focused on or like better than others? And the answer to that is no, and I'll go into why. And then another thing that I think people always ask about is what about the product or the company needs to be in place in order for us to want to make an offer to you to come to Techstars Austin. And that's a hard one to answer too. And the reason is because we have put a lot of time and effort over the last 6+ years, with a thesis around people. And we don't always get it right, But the way that I like to think about it, that we all like to think about it, is in sort of three tiers. The first tier is, how can we get how much conviction do we have on the CEO in two specific areas. The first is our conviction that the CEO has the ability to build a big and meaningful company over the course of the life of the company. And so in thinking about someone who is coming in, you're starting something from day zero when it's just an idea. Do we believe that you will be able to see this for, ideally till the very, very end, exit, IPO, whatever that might be, but certainly for a long time? Or do we think you're, someone who can come in, but then is going to need to be replaced? We don't want to. We want to think about someone who can build long-term, meaningful companies over a long period of time. So that's first. And the second part about the CEO is their ability to attract really great talent. So are you charismatic and a great leader, and you bring people around you that want to be around you? Like one of the sort of the ways that I think about it is, if I were going back into an operating company, would I want to come work for you? And so that's what I just described there is the bulk of the way that we think about it, about the companies that we want to work with every year. So that's probably, it's hard to quantify exactly. 75% of the decision is based right just around that. The next, call it 15, 20% of the decision is based around the founding team. And so there's sort of two questions that we try to answer there. The first is, does the founding team seem like they're a cohesive team? The way that you work together, the way that you interact with one another, right? Do we believe that you all are working towards a common goal, regardless of your own egos, and have the ability to get there? Or are you, more focused, or even if it's slightly so, more focused on your own well-being versus the greater good of building an incredible company? And it's a hard thing for us to nuance out, but it's something that we pay close attention to. And then the second part of that is it the right team to be working on the thing that you're working on, regardless of whatever it is? And so I'll get to the last little bit in a second, but our belief is that when those things are in place, a great CEO leader who can attract great people and a cohesive team, that's the right team to be working on whatever they're working on, it really doesn't matter what your product is or what industry you're in. You're going to figure it out, right? Because we know you're going to change. It's going to change multiple times, but we believe you'll have the ability to, navigate the really tough waters of building a business. And because we're coming into your company so early, it's important for us to have conviction around those things. The last little bit is around your product and the market. But it's not that we have a focus like, oh, we love marketplaces or we hate ed tech. In fact, neither one of those are necessarily true or false statements, but is the market and product interesting to us? And it's really more market than product, because I can guarantee you, whatever you think your product is, it won't be the same thing in 3 years, regardless of how successful you are. So is it an interesting market? And interesting is a relative thing. Sometimes interesting is like, is it interesting to us right now for whatever reason, right? Like whatever is sparking our own creativity. And then the other one is, do we believe that there is a market here, even if it doesn't exist already, or if it does exist, is there a market that this team could potentially break into and build something really, really meaningful? So that's how we think about the companies that we invest in. And I really should say the people that we invest in, because it's really more about people than companies. So that's that. And then I want to talk about the program a little bit. So if you have questions on anything I just said, drop them and ask a question and we will get to them. And then I'll move into this, so then we can get into more of the AMA part of this. So the program itself, some of you may know some of this, some of you may know none of it, some of you may know most of it. It's a 3-month program. It's a very intense program. And so sometimes people are worried, like, how am I supposed to run my business and go to the program at the same time? And so let me just address that right up front, which is our job. We're investors in your company, is not to get in your way. It's to put wind in your sails. So lots and lots of really successful companies have done this before, and it's doable. And we work with you to do that. We're not trying to get in your way. Our goal is, okay, whatever you're working on, like, how do we make sure it's the right thing? And how do we give you as much support and resource so that you can be more successful more quickly? The way that the program is structured. So let me answer another question that's probably going to come up. Typically, we run in person in Austin. So wherever you are in the world, we would want you to come to Austin for 3 months. You're not required to relocate here full time. And the program comes with a little stipend to make it easier for you to get here. We want you to be in person. There's a lot of big question marks on this next year with COVID. So we're hoping optimistically that it will be in person, but we really won't probably be able to answer that for a few months until we see how things go. We ran virtually last year. It was fine. But we like being around people. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. So the way that the structure is, it's sort of broken into overall into 3 parts. The first part is really getting to know each other, and that means your business, and sort of breaking everything down and learning as much about everything as possible. Sometimes that happens in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. Sometimes it takes the whole program. So there's no time bound to any of the 3 things I'm just going to mention. They happen regardless. All 3 things happen regardless. And there's a few different ways we do about that. But the primary way we do that is that in the first few weeks, we will facilitate meetings with over 100 mentors that you'll have in a really condensed period of time. And there's a few things that come out of that. One is you're talking about your business all the time. So you're learning about your business. You're getting feedback on your business, some that you want to hear, some that you don't want to hear. Some you'll agree with, some you won't, but lots and lots of feedback. We're hearing that feedback too. So it's an opportunity for us to collect a lot of data, us and you and the mentors about you. The other thing that you'll do there is you'll identify 3 to 5 mentors who will work with you throughout the course of the rest of the program, along with the program staff. The second part of the program is where we take all of that and we really develop the plan. So you come in 100% of the time, you all think you know exactly what you're going to do, and 100% of the time it changes. And for anyone who's founded a company before, that's just sort of the way that it goes, regardless of an accelerator. But we work with you on that. So we're figuring all of that out together. And then the last bit, I kind of think of as packaging, which is like whatever your goals are, we're getting you ready to go do that. So if you're raising money, we're helping you prepare for that. If you're not raising money and you're hiring people or whatever it might be, we're helping you prepare for that, for sales calls, or whatever, so you can continue to go out into the world and be successful. And we'll talk about post-program stuff after, but we never go away, and hopefully you don't want us to. So the other things that happen inside of the program itself is in the first few weeks, we do own your calendar, and the bulk of your calendar will be scheduled, but most of the program will not be, with the exception of some things that we try to keep very systematic, so they're predictable for you, so you can run your business. And some examples are Mondays, we will typically do KPI meetings. So we're all getting together, we're talking about the metrics in your business and what we're working on and how we know whether or not we're being successful. Tuesdays and Thursdays are typically when we're doing one-on-one. So it's me and you getting together, sort of rolling up our sleeves together and talking about strategy. Wednesdays, we typically have a workshop in the morning. And then in the evening, we call it family night, which is when if we're in person, the entire cohort gets together. We bring in a founder from outside. They do their founder stories. So we're hearing the stories of really, 6 other successful entrepreneurs. And then we have dinner together. And, sometimes we, maybe go out for a drink or something. And then Fridays, we typically do CTO and CEO lunches, which is a peer group. So the CEOs all get together, the CTOs all get together and spend time together. And then the other persistent thing that happens is every evening of the week, there's a functional roundtable, which are typically led by the cohort. So for example, Mondays might be marketing, Tuesdays might be sales, Wednesdays might be product, Thursdays might be fundraising. So they're not required, but they're there so that people that are, having challenges can work together and work through those things. Did I miss anything, Caroline Griffin?
No, I don't think you missed anything off the top of my head, but yeah, the program is definitely structured very intentionally, and something that maybe we can take a moment to say, like, what we really enjoy as far as running program, or what we see with founders. And something that is not to be understated is just the bond that you create with fellow founders, and going through, the mentor madness or mentor office hours, as we call it, and all of the kind of assumptions that you validate or invalidate, and so on and so forth. Just the business journey that you go on during the 3 months is really impactful. And create super strong bonds. And as we see with entrepreneurs, it's so important to have that connection with others and be able to lean on people to go through this journey that can really relate to what you're going through. So that is definitely one of the top reasons I think people look to join Techstars is to get that community.
Yeah, I want to echo that because I think it can't be overstated, and it also is a really hard thing to, one, I think, wrap your head around how impactful that is, and two, to value it before Techstars, which is the relationships that you develop specifically with your cohort, but also, you know, across the entire portfolio. So, you know, in Austin and in Texas, you know, the way that companies work together for literally years and years and years after is incredible. And there are just so many amazing, you know, micro and macro examples of really, you know, amazing relationships and bonds, and companies helping each other be successful over time.
For sure, for sure. Okay, we have a lot of questions coming in, so I'm going to start moderating that and you know, let's go into that
Awesome.
section. Anyone who's just joining, introduce yourself in the chat, but use the ask a question feature to submit your questions. That's what we're going to be moderating. And yeah, so let's go from there. The
So one
first
thing,
question.
Caroline, one thing before you jump in, I haven't looked at the questions yet, but there was a question in the chat about being a solo founder. So I want to address that, and also being a non-technical founder, or not having a non-technical founder on the team, not having a technical founder on the team. So I'll start with this. Every one of my peers thinks about selection and companies and that particular question a little bit differently. So when I'm answering right now, I'm going to answer them. I'm answering them for us in Austin, but not necessarily for anybody else. I don't care if you're a solo founder. I don't care if you don't have a technical person on your team. I've been a solo founder. I've founded companies without, and I'm not technical. We've had, I want to say, I don't know the exact number, but out of probably 60 something companies that I've had go through my programs, at least a third, if not more, were solo founders. So I think it is a complete myth that you need a co-founder to be successful. I think it's nice to have someone that you can trust, but you can also get an executive coach for that. And then in terms of, you know, technical, if you're doing something like ridiculously deep tech, it probably helps if you have someone that you're working with, even if they're not a founder, that's fine, but like a team or a person that you are working with on that. But it is not a requirement. And if it's not super deep tech, you know, there are plenty of ways to spin up an MVP and an early product and show success, and then hire those people on later. So if you're worried about that, don't go find a co-founder. Don't go find a technical co-founder. Hire somebody, fine, but you don't need to do that. And it will not hurt your chances in Austin at all.
Yeah, that's great. And we get that question a lot.
Yeah, and I think you can hear me now, correct?
Yeah.
All right. Most of you have already heard my voice, so it's okay. It's good to let the others talk. But yeah, that just goes back to, like, you know, the importance of also the cohort being close. Is that a lot of people that, you know, if we do have solo founders who don't have that, like, necessarily the support system within the company that they're building, all of a sudden there's 10 or 11 other founders going through similar things at similar times so they can lean on. So it's a nice community as well.
Absolutely. So one of the first questions we got from Rebecca is, what kind of progress are you looking for in startups that are finishing their MVP but haven't launched yet?
I'll do my best to answer it. And we get, as you might imagine, we get that question all the time. But, you know, I think because of how the stage that we're typically in investing, which is pre-repeatability, progress as a factor, like to say like, oh, we want you to have this much revenue or this many users or this, like, I think that would be an insincere answer. What we're really looking for is how are you going through the process of building what you're building? What are you learning? How are you taking those learnings and adapting your idea to the things that you're learning? And how have you been doing that over time? And if you're coming in really early, like maybe pre-product, you know, help us understand how you have done similar things in the past, right? Like, we want to learn, like, what's your perseverance like? What's your learning style like? What's your coachability like? What happens when you face adversity? What happens when you're wrong? How do you react to that? What happens when you're right, and how do you react to that? And so those are the things that we're trying to learn. So it's less about progress. You can have, and I'll give you a sort of a reverse example. You can say, like, hey, we're doing 3 million in revenue and we're crushing it. And then I ask you to explain to me a little bit about, why you're crushing it and about your numbers, and you don't know. And over the course of several meetings, you never figure it out. I'm less likely to want to work with you, because if you don't know, I'm certainly not going to know. And so how do we figure out, how do we get that to repeatability and eventually scale? But you may be pre-product, but going through a great learning process and taking those learnings and continually iterating and using data to help guide your decisions, and not necessarily make them, because when you're doing novel things, the data is not always going to tell you exactly the right thing, because it might not exist. But like, how are you using data to help guide your decisions? That's going to be much more important for us.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's see what else. So one question from Danny. Amos discussed looking at the CEO when deciding on which company we'll choose. Our team picked our titles out of a hat, if you will. We understand that a company needs to place titles, but are you really looking at one person, the CEO, and what does that mean?
It's a good question, Danny. I like it. So one, I would say, the second thing we said is like the cohesiveness of the team. So that is really important. And so if we see that the team works well together, that's great. But my experience is there does need to be one person that's ultimately responsible and accountable for running the company. And so if you pick those names out of a hat, that's fine. Maybe that works well for you. How are you actually leading in that role, right? If that is your role, and if you and your team believe you are the best person to be in that role, regardless of how you came to that decision, and we believe that too, awesome. And I think we all need to be really honest with ourselves about, like, okay, do I have what it takes to do this role? Being the CEO is a big, hard role.
Awesome. This is a question we touched on, but I just want to reiterate on it for anyone who was joining later. Rebecca had also asked if we were interested in any particular industries. The answer to that is no. We are completely industry agnostic. So no matter what industry you're in, definitely feel free to apply. So another one from Tom. So are the founder, co-founders the only members invited, or can we bring other core team members for program?
Great question. Theoretically, everyone is invited and encouraged to participate 100%. And the only caveat I'll say there is, if you've got a team, and I've had a couple of companies that fit this, right? I had a company that had 30 employees. Or 40 employees when they were going through Techstars. That would be impossible for us to house. So we worked with the CEO to say, okay, here's the core group of people. And then the CEO, or the entire management team, made a decision, like, different people might pop in and out, but we had 30, 40 people, they had an office somewhere else. And so they would bring people in. And we've had that actually happen on several occasions, even with smaller teams. But everyone is theoretically invited. The number that we would have to cap it at would depend on really what the rest of the cohort looks like. But a few people for sure, 3, 4, 5 people should not be a problem.
Totally. And we've had kind of the core 3 or 4 people that are part of everything within the program. And then as we kind of progress and, the strategy sessions or roundtables Amos mentioned, if you have a marketing, manager on your team and you want them to pop in for some of those, there's fluidity there to where, they are welcome, even if they aren't participating in the rest of the core experience.
And I'd say not just welcome, but encourage, because again,
totally.
we are successful when you're successful. So if you believe the team member is going to get something positive out of something we're doing, bring them, please.
Right. And so maybe the other side to that question is so one question was, does the whole team have to be there? But I'm going to focus it in more, do all of the founders need to be there? So who at a minimum are we requiring to participate if you join Techstars?
the CEO needs to be there and be an active participant. And I'm trying to think if there's a case where that may not be the case, because I think just not everything is as binary as that. But for certain, I think the CEO needs to be a part of the entire experience. And then beyond that, I sort of would leave it up to the management team to make the best decision. So required, no. However, if there's areas that are important to your business and the program can be impactful, you should take advantage of it and milk it for everything it's worth, right? So even if you are a really competent, highly experienced CTO, we've got a massive network of people that you can tap into that, are likely, your peers that you can learn from, that you can, help learn, that you can network with, to figure out solving some of the biggest challenges that you have.
Awesome. Got a couple of questions around what the Techstars investment looks like. So would you like to give a kind of quick overview of what we call the Techstars deal, and the investment terms?
Yeah, so think about the Techstars deal, break it into two parts. There's the program itself, and that is the core thing that we'll talk about. And then I'll talk about the investment part of it separately. The program itself is what I described, the 3 months where we're working together, we're hands-on. And that is in exchange for 6% common shares in your company. And the reason we take common shares is because we want to be on the same playing field as the founding team. So we will dilute right along with the founding team. The program comes with a $20,000 stipend. It is not an investment into your company, although it comes across like an investment. It is not meant to be a valuation event. It is there specifically to say, like, okay, if you're not local to Austin, you don't have to spend your company money to get here. Here's some money. If you're local to Austin, you can hire some people to help run the day-to-day operations. But it's really, think of it more like a stipend. That's one part. The second part is, once you're accepted into Techstars, you have the option to take a $100,000 note, which is managed by a different group. And that $100,000 note, again, it's not required. It does come with specific terms. And it's a $3 million cap on the note, unless you've raised at least $250,000 already at a higher valuation, and then we'll match that valuation up to $5 million. And if that doesn't work for you, don't take the note. And if it does, it's really, really easy money once you're in. You don't have to pitch for it. And both the 100K and the 20K get funded typically in the first week of the program.
Cool. Any other questions around the investment structure? Feel free to drop in, ask a question, and we can dig in a little bit more. Let's see. One question was, and this is interesting because we actually had this in this last program. Would you suggest college students apply to Techstars given other stressors?
We did. We had a college senior come through Techstars in our last program, and the way that he worked it out was, I think he had he took no classes. He was able to get credit for it. I don't recommend it necessarily. I think this was a founder who we all fell in love with and believe is going to be really successful. And we had a candid conversation about, what it meant. And while, I would say while, your education is really important, the commitment we're making to each other and the responsibility is that we're focused on building the company. So I just think it's, if it's on your mind and we're getting close, it's just a really honest conversation we have to have with one another. And it might be a case where we really want to work together and the timing doesn't work, and so we kick it out, till the next program.
Yeah. And kind of another extension of that, which I've seen a few times, and I know Griffin has seen as well in some of our initial conversations we're having, is founders who aren't full-time yet. So maybe they're still part-time in the company. I think that same logic applies, and I'd say maybe even we prefer that full time, but let me know what you think of that,
Yeah.
college aside.
Yeah, college aside, the CEO absolutely has to be full time. You may not be full time before Techstars starts, but like once it starts, this has to be the only thing that you're doing. In terms of the rest of the team, that needs to be a conversation that we have. Some roles may be more critical, some may be less critical. We can figure that out together. But the CEO absolutely needs to be full time, working on nothing else.
For sure. From Corey McCain, is there communication amongst Techstars programs? As in, do we communicate with other founders from other programs, or is each one independent? So definitely there are opportunities to communicate with founders from other programs. The majority of your interactions during program are definitely with your fellow classmates, but we had some subject matter groups that we put together with other programs that were taking place at the same time, like marketplace companies, female founders. So we gave them, kind of a platform and opportunity to connect. And this goes with the mentor network. So if you're coming into Techstars and you are looking for resources, mentors, fellow founders in a specific area, the whole network is yours. And so we'll make sure to make those connections so that you get the most out of your experience. So definitely it's not just the Techstars Austin network, it's the entire Techstars network that you do gain access to.
Yeah, and I want to use the word encourage again, which is we encourage you to be reaching out to other founders across the network and developing relationships, because there's so much power in this network. It is really hard to describe just how well networked you are once you're inside of Techstars. And something that I've been doing, I don't even know if Caroline and Griffin know this, but I've been doing a lot of workshops for some of the programs that are in session now. And the thing that I've been encouraging them to do, and we've been doing a lot of, which is it's 2 or 3 programs together, and I'm teaching it virtually. And then when we're going out into breakout rooms, we're actually putting companies from different programs together exactly for that reason, to just help encourage more and more working with companies across the network.
Absolutely. And then let's see a few others. Okay, this is one that's a little bit more specific towards the application process. So I'll take a pause to say applications did open July 19th. They remain open until October 6th. Griffin, if you want to drop the application link in the chat, we'll drop it there. But the question was, if you had to choose one quality that you look for in the pitch video of the team, what would it be or look like? And this is referring, I'm assuming, to the pitch video that you submit as part of your application.
Griffin, do you want to answer that one, or do you want me to take it?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer. I think that really the things that you want to sort of emphasize in that are the team and how you kind of work together, how you communicate. And so it's good to, I think, highlight that component of the business, as well as, talk a little bit about high-level overview. I mean, it's 60 seconds long. It's not a ton of time, but if you can get the founding team in there, talk a little bit about it yourselves, emphasize why you're building what you're building, why you care at all, why you're spending your time on this, I think that's going to go a long way. And I would say that trickles down to the application itself. When you're actually filling things out, there's a team section. I think that's something where you should really spend a lot of time and make sure that you're making it clear why you're doing this. If you're entrepreneurs, you're smart people, you can do anything with your time. Why is it this that you're building right now? And so I think that's really helpful. And then there's also a metrics section, which, as Amos has made pretty clear already, right? It's really important to us. So you want to spend some time in that section. And even if the metrics aren't like necessarily that you have tons and tons of revenue and tons of users and customers, it can be small things, but what are you thinking about? Just showing that you're thinking about things analytically, I think, is going to go a long way as well in the application. And if I miss anything, Amos, please add on.
No, I think that was great. Caroline, before you go to the next question, I just want to address Tom and Parker had a little conversation on the side, and I want to just make sure that it's clear. So the 6% is for the program. So it's 6% common shares in your company, which is the same shares that the founder has, all the founders have, which is different than if you're getting an investment from a VC, which are preferred shares. So 6%, that's the program. Separately, you have an option to take $100,000 note. It's not 80, it's not 120, it's always the same. It's $100,000 note, and it's a $3 million valuation cap unless you've raised money already. And if you've raised at least a certain amount of money, we will match whatever cap you have up to 5 million. So if you've raised, $500,000 at $4 million, we'll give you a $4 million cap, and we'll match up to 5 million.
Great. And anyone who's wants to dig in on the deal and has questions around the investment, we're available to talk about that one-on-one. And like I said, we'll drop Griffin's email in the chat, so you can feel free to reach out to Griffin for follow-up, office hours and just digging into some more of the logistics. And Amos, of course, is available to answer that as well. Had a couple questions around bringing in non-US based startups focused on US users. What's your stance on that, Amos?
Yeah, even if you're not focused on US, I forget the exact stat, but it's some 20+% of the companies that have been through a Techstars Austin program are not from the US. Did we have any non-US last year? I can't remember. Oh, we did.
Yeah.
We had one from Colombia.
No,
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely friendly to non-US companies. So encourage those global friends to apply.
Yeah, we've had India, Estonia, Canada, France, Colombia, Uruguay. We've had companies from all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Let's see. Sorry, I'm kind of looking through. Okay, so back to a little bit more on the application. On the application, it states, please provide your revenue, customer, user growth KPIs or metrics, include totals and month-over-month growth for the last 6 months. Our app just went live in June and we're pre-revenue. How would we best answer this question?
What I would encourage you to do is look at, one, what were the decisions you made and the data you collected to get to the point where you were going to launch the app, right? So, for example, if you've had 1,000 conversations with different users and you've collected those conversations, share that with us. Show us your thinking about it. Tell us the KPIs you think are going to be important and why. And then as you've launched, how is it measuring up to what you expected? And don't worry if it is completely wrong and flopping. It doesn't mean that there's not something there. Again, I'm going to go back to the traction is less important than the way that you're using the information you have to continually make better decisions.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and again, that's another thing. We're happy to chat with you one-on-one in office hours based on the stage you're in, how to approach the application and especially metrics. But just keep in mind, we're really open to all stages. So we had several pre-product and pre-revenue companies in our most recent class. And, we focused on what were the right metrics, what were the right KPIs that will continue to move them forward in their journey. So it's okay if it's not quite perfect right now. That's a big part of why joining Techstars can be so instrumental in your business, especially if you are early stage. Okay, let's see. There was one question around what is the success rate with Austin companies or portfolio in regards to unicorns, companies going public, funding rounds, etc. So this is a bit different. All of our metrics are slightly different in terms of measuring success. But Amos, if you want to highlight any portfolio companies or how you measure success for companies coming out of the Techstars Austin program.
Yeah, so I'll answer it, but I'd like to understand more of what the person is trying to actually have answered, because there's a lot that you can sort of I could assume. But so first of all, success is an interesting question, because if you think about, I've run 6 programs and the average company takes 10 to 15 years. None of them are that old yet, right? 3 of the years, or 30 of the companies, are less than 3 years old since they've gone through Techstars. So any answer I give you, you have to keep in mind the time horizon. I think we're doing a really good job. So I've had 60 companies go through Techstars. 50 of them, I think 51 of them, are still operating, which I think is a really good testament, right? But flips the averages upside down. And we've had I think in aggregate, just in the 6 years that I've been running it, well over, gosh, probably well over 200 million raised with all the companies. And there's an interesting caveat there, because I also sometimes like companies that never plan to raise money or raise as little as possible. So amount raised is a metric to look at, but it is not always the right metric. One of the most successful companies in the overall Techstars portfolio, Techstars Austin portfolio, they've raised one small round, and they're doing they're doing a lot in revenue. I won't disclose what it is in case there's, it's not public information. They're significantly successful. They're a profitable company. They are on the road to being a unicorn, and you probably haven't heard of them. And if you have, you know who I'm talking about. And they've raised almost nothing, right? And then we've got a bunch of other companies that haven't raised a ton of money. And, so I think one of the things to think about when you even ask that question is like, what are you looking to do? And I'm just going to be candid here. If you're like, I'm put on this earth to build a unicorn, I want every single company to be $1 billion company. But if that's your goal, I'm going to question whether this is the right fit for Austin. What I want to know is, are you trying to build a meaningful company that is providing value to whoever it is you're trying to serve? And if so, can we build the biggest company possible in the best way possible? And if we do that, we will have a successful outcome. So I don't know if that answers your question. And if it doesn't, feel free to, keep asking.
Yeah, and I think, I wanted to highlight that question because it is different for everyone. And if, you have to look within yourself on why you want to join Techstars, what your goals are, and they may evolve as you go through the program, but that success will look different for everyone. Everyone coming out will have their own measure of success and own growth. And so it's important to be able to take that space to really think about that and go into the program intentionally. Okay, another question.
Yeah, well, I say most companies, period, are not unicorns. Period. Not Austin. And in the world, most startups do not become unicorns. And I want to be invested in the ones that raise the least amount of money, because then we all make the most amount of money.
Cool. All right, and it looks like we answered that question well for
awesome,
Danny.
Danny.
So appreciate it. All right. Gabe asked, does Techstars have targeted mentors and resources for different industries, like ed tech companies? Do you have mentors and resources that have been in the industry that can help guide us? The short answer to that is absolutely. Our mentors are across all industries. So, as far as that goes, definitely have a very expansive network there. And of course, we're always looking to bring in more mentors in different fields. So we analyze our network, see, we have a lot of ed tech, we have a lot of marketplace. Hypothetically, maybe we need to bring in more health tech. So we're always keeping an eye on that to make sure we have an evenly distributed network. But the benefit is we have all of the Techstars network as well. So if we are missing, a certain type of subject matter expert that you're looking for, I can guarantee you that we have thousands of mentors across Techstars, and there's someone who can help. So definitely, I would say that would definitely not be a problem at all.
Yeah, and I what I'm going to say is going to sound like bullshit, but it's truly not. Our network is so expansive that if you have the right message, if we have the right message, there's probably almost nobody in the business world globally that we can't get in touch with if we have the right message. Just because you want to meet them doesn't mean you'll get to meet them. But if we have the right message, there's almost no one we can't get in touch with.
Absolutely. One question was about that. I'm sorry, I just lost it. With our prototype coming to completion using outsourced designers, we need to onboard a developer. Would love to hear your thoughts about hiring a developer prior to the start of program, or wait to tackle this while in program.
I think my short answer is, don't build your business around the program, build your business. And if you feel the need to hire someone prior to the program, and especially if we're already agreed to engage with one another, leverage us. Just because we're not in program doesn't mean we don't want to help you build a business. We're invested in you. We want to help you build a business. But you can ask us those questions regardless of that. And if we can be helpful, we will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we actually had a few of the companies that were going through that process in this last program about whether to develop in-house or hire developers. And so we had some really awesome mentors that walked them through that process, as well as Amos, of course, and had great referrals to different developers. The cohort helped each other out, compared and contrasted their experiences. So again, like Amos said, work on your business. Don't let the program stop you from doing what you need to do or try to time everything with it. But just know, of course, that there's the resources for it whenever you are in program. Okay, we have a few more. Okay, things move fast, change fast. When would you prefer for startups to apply? ASAP or closer to October?
I would say sooner versus later, because it gives us more opportunity to learn about you and to watch you over time and get to meet you and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And again, Griffin, if you want to drop your email, feel free to reach out to Griffin to set up those office hours. Like I'll say, if you are wanting to get a few things in line before submitting your application, I would definitely prioritize meeting with Griffin as soon as possible so that you are on our radar. So, and we can start having these conversations, even if that means you don't hit submit on the application for another month. It's definitely important to try to get on our radar because we do get a lot of applications and have a lot of conversations. This is another good one for folks that are kind of early stage. What next steps do you have for founders who have a startup idea and prototype? So maybe you're in ideation, you have the prototype. What's your recommended next step?
Talk to as many users as possible and put it in front of as many people as possible. And depending on what it is, if you can get them to put some skin in the game so you can see how their words match their actions, that is probably the best thing you could do. So if it's B2B, it's a little bit easier because you can get them to pay something. If it's a B2C product, maybe it's a little bit harder, but get people to use it. But talk to as many people. And I don't mean dozens, I mean thousands if you can.
Great. Another question from Gabe. As part of the investment, does Techstars like to have an active voice in the decision the companies make?
No, that's not how our role. We're there to help be guidance and be advisors for you, but we don't. It is your company to do with as you please. We don't have a big enough stake to do that anyway, but no.
Great. Let's see. There's a lot of questions and I'm sorry, guys, I'm looking through. Tom asked, can we bring mom? Not sure about that. And then
what does mom do?
Yeah, unless mom is a co-founder or teammate, like for sure bring mom along. Another kind of funny one.
We've had mother-daughter teams a couple of times before, but they're actually both co-founders.
Okay, one from Omar. Any preference between a startup that is hoping to create a market based on their brand new solution or a company that aims to compete and provide the best version of a solution of that kind that already exists?
No, I wouldn't even know how to make a preference. I think it goes back to, do we believe that whatever it is you're trying to do, do we believe you're going to be successful? So two people next to each other with those two types of businesses, we believe you're going to be equally as successful. You're both in.
Awesome. You indicated you were interested in companies that are in a market that doesn't exist yet. Sounds like category design. How do you weigh a company's application in light of their focus on, this is the same question on it, designing an entirely new category and their plan to condition the market. So I think that's a bit of the same question.
Yeah.
let's see. From Rebecca from earlier, do you have any specific corporate partners that you work with in Austin that might be able to pilot some of the products? Yeah, we have various partners that we work with in Austin. We also have the Techstars Global Network partners that provide a ton of resources for founders. And then we've had, mentors and founders work together as ways to kind of pilot what they're working on. So I think again, it just depends on what it is you're working on and what your desired outcome is. But that again is part of the benefit of the network is to get more eyes on the product and be able to get more customer research done. Let's see, and then one from Viraj is if the CEO has no experience in building a company, but he or she has the charisma to attract great advisors and people around him or her who can be fulfilled the requirements and qualifications to achieve the vision of the company. How much chance is there for a company to be a part of that cohort? So this is a CEO with no prior experience building a company.
Yeah, so I can read that question two different ways. I can read it as no experience building a company or no experience in the market you're trying to tackle. I can answer them similarly, which is that charisma is one thing, but do I believe that you can build a company and attract great people? Because if you can, as a CEO, you should be learning all the time, and your job is really to set the vision, keep the company capitalized, and bring in the right team and culture to build the thing you have a vision for. And so I do think those are the three most important jobs of a CEO. And if that's the case, then it's very helpful when you have industry knowledge. It's very helpful when you've done that before, but it doesn't mean that we don't believe you can do it. Everyone who is a successful CEO has been a first-time CEO at some point.
Right.
And we've had plenty of first-time CEOs.
Yeah. Knowing team is important. Does that extend to strategic advisors, one or more about the core team working on the business?
Yeah, it's a yes and. I mean, my experience is strategic advisors. They can be helpful with guidance, but who is rolling up their sleeves and doing the day-to-day work? Sometimes those advisors do that. So it's helpful, but the more people that are all in, the better.
Great. Okay, we are nearing the end. We have about a minute. So I'll still have these questions. I'll go through and comment on them. We are going to be hosting weekly events. This is our first one. Next week, Amos and Jason Seeds, the Techstars Chief Investment Officer and first Techstars Austin MD, will be together chatting about building a venture backable company, preparing for a fundraise, how to have a successful fundraise. We'll have another AMA down the line. So we will post on our LinkedIns and on our Twitter the schedule. And then if you ask to be part of the Techstars Austin email updates, we'll also send that. So definitely keep coming back, keep asking your questions. Griffin's email is in the chat. We'll repost it one more time, but feel free to reach out to Griffin if you'd like to dig in more about Techstars Austin and applying. And of course, Amos and I are available as well. Reach out, connect on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and yeah. Any last thoughts?
Just really appreciate you all joining us today. More than anything, regardless of Techstars Austin and your participation, we want you to be successful, and we wish you the best. And if to the degree that we can be helpful, we're here for that. It's part of our job in the community here.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining. It was great. I will get to the rest of the questions, or if you have more, like I said, connect with Griffin, with me, or Amos, and we'll get back to you.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.